The moment she said it, the city outside the glass walls seemed to pause, sunlight frozen between skyscrapers, air heavy with something unspoken and dangerous. The most powerful woman in the room, a CEO feared by boardrooms and headlines alike, looked at a man who carried exhaustion in his eyes and hope in his posture, and asked him to pretend he belonged to her world, just for one night. She believed it would be simple. She had no idea that the answer of a single father, shaped by loss, responsibility, and quiet strength, would shake the carefully built walls around her heart. Before the story pulls you any deeper into its emotions, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that life can change when two broken people meet at the right moment, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Touch. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The man was named Erich Calder, and his life had never been glamorous. Every morning began the same way, under clear daylight filtering through thin curtains, with the sound of his young daughter's breathing reminding him why he woke up at all. He lived in a modest apartment that smelled faintly of detergent and morning tea, a place filled with school drawings taped to walls and quiet reminders of the woman he had lost years ago. Erich had once dreamed of becoming an architect, someone who designed spaces for people to feel safe. Instead, he now worked as a facilities coordinator in a towering corporate building downtown, ensuring lights worked, meeting rooms stayed functional, and problems were solved before anyone noticed them. It was invisible work, the kind that kept the world moving without applause. His daughter, Zaira, was 6 years old and carried a brightness that felt almost unfair to someone who had seen as much pain as Erich had. She believed her father could fix anything from broken toys to bad dreams. Each morning, under the full light of day, he packed her lunch carefully, brushing her hair with patience, promising her he would be back before sunset. His life revolved around schedules, responsibilities, and doing the right thing even when no one was watching. Love, for him, was not dramatic. It was consistent. It was showing up. On the other side of the city lived Ilara Vaughn, the CEO of a multinational tech firm, a woman whose name carried weight in business magazines and investor calls. Her days were flooded with daylight meetings, sharp suits, and expectations that never slept. She had built her empire from nothing, clawing her way through skepticism, betrayal, and the unspoken rule that women had to be twice as strong to be taken half as seriously. Her office sat high above the city, flooded with natural light and silence so polished it felt cold. Success had given her control, but it had also taken something from her. Somewhere along the way, warmth had become a liability. Ilara's problem was not money or power, it was perception. A major charity gala was approaching, an event broadcast live, sponsored by families and donors who believed leadership should look stable, traditional, and reassuring. Rumors had begun to circulate about her being difficult, isolated, and incapable of personal connection. The board suggested, gently but firmly, that she soften her image. She needed to look human, approachable, grounded. The solution they hinted at made her uncomfortable but desperate enough to consider it. She needed a companion, someone believable, kind, and harmless to her carefully controlled world. That was how her path crossed with Erich's, on an ordinary day flooded with sunlight, in a hallway that smelled of polished floors and coffee. He was fixing a sensor outside her executive lounge when she noticed him. Not because he was loud or impressive, but because he moved with quiet respect, greeting assistants by name, listening when they spoke. There was something disarming about a man who did his job without demanding recognition. Ilara watched him longer than she intended, curiosity breaking through her usual indifference. When the request came, it felt surreal to Erich. He was called into her office, a space filled with daylight and tension, and offered something that made no sense in his world. She needed someone to appear by her side, to stand with her, to act as if they belonged together. It was framed as a professional arrangement, a favor, a temporary role. For Elara, it was strategy. For Arish, it was an insult to everything he believed love should be. He had lost his wife to illness, held her hand under hospital lights during the day, promised her their daughter would always be protected. Pretending to be something he was not felt like betrayal. What Elara did not expect was the way he responded. Arish did not raise his voice or show anger. Instead, he spoke from a place of truth, explaining that his life was not a costume to be worn for convenience. He carried real responsibility, real loss, and real love for his child. He told her that if she wanted him to stand beside her, it would not be as a prop but as a human being with boundaries and dignity. His words, calm and steady, cut through her defenses more sharply than any accusation could have. For the first time in years, someone had not been impressed, intimidated, or manipulated by her power. Daylight passed differently after that conversation. Elara found herself thinking about Arish during meetings, distracted by the memory of his honesty. She began noticing the small kindnesses around her building, the people she had overlooked for years. Arish, meanwhile, returned to his routine, believing the strange request was over. Yet something had shifted. When Elara reached out again, it was not with entitlement but hesitation. She proposed a compromise, something closer to truth than performance. Attend the event, yes, but as himself, with his values intact. No lies beyond what was necessary. No disrespect to the life he had built. As preparations began, daylight scenes unfolded that slowly bridged the gap between their worlds. Elara visited a public park for the first time in years, watching Arish help his daughter with homework under a tree, sunlight dappling their faces. She saw the patience in his eyes, the way Zahra laughed freely, unaware of titles or wealth. For Elara, who had grown up without stability, the simplicity was overwhelming. She realized how empty her victories felt without someone to share them with. The gala arrived on a bright afternoon that melted into evening, but the story remained rooted in the clarity of the day that led them there. Elara walked into the venue not with a fabricated story, but with quiet confidence born from honesty. Arish stood beside her, not as an accessory, but as himself. When questions came, their answers were simple, respectful, and real. The audience sensed it. Authenticity carried more power than any carefully crafted image. But the true turning point did not happen under chandeliers or cameras. It happened the next day, under the full light of morning, when a small misunderstanding threatened to undo everything. A tabloid story questioned Arish's intentions, implying he was using Elara for status. Old wounds surfaced. Arish considered walking away to protect his daughter from scrutiny. Elara, faced with the choice between reputation and truth, surprised everyone, including herself. She publicly defended him, not as a strategy, but as an act of respect. She acknowledged his integrity, his role as a father, and the fact that kindness did not come from wealth. That decision changed her. It cost her some approval, but it gave her something far greater: trust. Arish saw that she was willing to stand alone for what was right, just as he had always done. Their relationship, still undefined, grew from mutual admiration rather than necessity. If this story has started to stir something inside you, if you feel connected to these moments of honesty and courage, remember that your engagement helps stories like this reach more hearts. Like, comment, and share if you believe that real strength often comes from kindness. Life did not turn into a fairy tale overnight. Arish remained a devoted father first. Elara continued to lead her company with determination, but daylight felt warmer in their shared moments. They met for simple lunches, talked about fears rather than achievements, learned how to exist without pretending.